Chair of the Thames Business Association, and we're very pleased to be hosting this evening's forum. Our CEO, Sue Lewis, who would normally be the face of us and standing here, is holidaying overseas at the moment, so this is me. On behalf of the Business Association, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to Mayor Lynn, Chief Executive Lynn, I think Adrian Catron as Chair of the Community Board, councillors, community board members, and you, ladies and gentlemen. This is a great turnout, I have to say. Thanks also to Martin Rodley, councillor, for putting all of the technical stuff together, so that's why you can hear me. Long may it last, Martin. And there's also, he's indicated to me there's a cup of tea afterwards if you're interested. By the way, if there is a fire, and it's almost hot enough for one, you go to the green signs and they are your exits, or you just go to that door over there, which is open. And the toilets, as you probably know, are out in the lobby. These are extraordinary times, and where lives and livelihoods of people in our district are, and across the Coromandel are at risk. And it's really helpful to have this opportunity to meet and discuss that. Lynn and Aileen, as a business association, we understand the pressure that you are under. We really appreciate that there is much to address in terms of broken infrastructure throughout the district, and not wishing to compound your problems, but I'm sure that you're aware by now that in Thames many businesses are experiencing a distinct drop-off in profitability and turnover. And locally we've been advised of turnover reductions in the range 30 to 50% in recent times. We've also got feedback from bed and breakfast operators who are seeing cancellations in long bookings. One was a 7-day booking, and the reason is the uncertainty factor. So what's really positive, however, is that we are also receiving member feedback that I guess is seeking to work with council or whatever authority will add value to find a collaborative approach to innovate, I suppose, ways of telling people that Thames and the Coromandel is open for business. And I think that the discussion and the submissions that you'll hear about tonight, and that questions you might ask, will really assist that process. So we have an agenda which you just flicked on, which is brilliant. Good coordinating. The agenda really is that Lynn and Aileen will present their position. I think Destination Coromandel will talk about initiatives, and then our host for the balance of the evening, Peter Revel, will run the submissions discussion, and I think you'll find that very helpful. So on that note, it's my pleasure to hand over to the Mayor, Lynn, for the balance of the proceedings.
Thank you, Jeff. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask Aileen to give you an update on where we're at with a number of the things that she's been working on. Aileen and I work very, very closely as a team, and there's a bunch of stuff that we would like to update you on, and no doubt you'll have some questions and some concerns, but if it's all right with you folks, I'll ask Aileen to give you an update, and then I'll fill in the other bits and pieces. So between the two of us, hopefully you'll be right up to date with the information that we've got. So,
yeah, kia ora koutou, ngā mihi nui, ngā mihi mahana. Yeah, thank you for having us here tonight. I've now been in the job 6 months, and I'm looking around the room, I'm actually seeing faces I know. So to those that know me, hello, lovely to see you, and it's really nice to be starting to know people around town. Sure. Yeah. Yeah, so gosh, what a ride it's been over the last few months, and I have to say I noticed in November that the businesses were struggling. I spoke to some of the folk on the main street who were struggling to find staff for roles in their businesses, and I guess the town was struggling before these weather events came along. So November was the first major weather event. Since then we've had 6. We've had 2 metres of rain since the 1st of January. And the really troubling part about that was actually the fact that the saturation in the soils on the peninsula were beyond anything that has been measured before. And I saw the graphs. The Regional Council were very clear with us that this was an unprecedented situation, and this was in early January. So to have 2 cyclones come through thereafter, it's no surprise that we had slips all over the peninsula. And I can say that having seen the photographs last week of the helicopter trip that went around photographing the roads, I have to say it's a miracle that there wasn't a car underneath one of those slips. Had it been daylight, had we not gone out with that messaging to stay off the road, stay home until the storm passes, I'm sure we would have had much more things to be discussing here tonight. So, you know, on the one hand, what's happened has been pretty horrendous and is going to be with us for some time, but on the other hand, we've also got some blessings that could have been worse. Many of the people in local government that I know are in Hawke's Bay, and what a terrible situation down there. So I guess while it's hard here, we also have to recognise it could have been worse. So in terms of the council, we have had an activated emergency operating centre, and by activated that means there's staff monitoring around the clock, putting out messaging, keeping an eye on roads, keeping an eye on river levels, probably for the last 6 weeks. So that's taken a huge amount of staff resource. At the peak of the event, we had something like 100 people either on our Zoom calls or in our emergency operating centre. It's been astounding, the work with the services in the district, Fire Emergency New Zealand, the police, we've had the army, you name it, they've worked with us, and the joined up approach on this peninsula is just amazing, and people should pat themselves on the back for what's been, sadly, a really good result through lots of dress rehearsals. When we went to activation, a number of districts around the Waikato all fired up as well, and none of them were as well rehearsed as we were. So yeah, look, it's just right across the community, the support's been amazing. So where to from here? We're still in an emergency situation in that we still have a state of emergency. We resisted putting one in place. When you call a state of emergency, there's pluses and minuses. In our case, we resisted right up to the point where the fire service said, look, we need some powers, and if you declare, we can have those powers to get people to evacuate. So we had a number of places where evacuations were necessary, and people were looking like digging their heels in. And that's when Fen said to us, look, we need this declaration to be able to do this. So that's in part why we went to the declaration, and I think it's just as well we did, because about the moment we did it, everything started to escalate anyway. But throughout January, we managed really carefully to keep below the declaration kind of threshold, because the moment you do declare, suddenly you're in a command and control structure through to the group, which is all of the Waikato Civil Defence, and ultimately through to Wellington. When we're in the state of activation, we're operating as a council and have a little bit more flexibility about the way we operate. You see it with Hawke's Bay, so the moment this national declaration was declared, some of the resources that were coming out the sides from the ministries just stopped. And now the ministries are all being pushed into this all-of-government response to the disaster, which does include us. But what that meant was some of the links that we were creating with some of the agencies were perhaps not as strong as they were a week ago, and Lynn will probably speak to this about how the tune has changed a little bit with the National Declaration in place. So in terms of what we've been doing, you will have read that we've had, how many ministers now? 4? 3?
Another one on the way.
Another one on the way, yeah. So we had Minister McNulty through in his capacity as Civil Defence Minister and also Local Government Minister. We took the opportunity to show him the roading network and talked at length about what it was that we needed to get the roading network back up such that the roads were able to be used. And the complicating factor here is that it's both the local roading network and the state highway roading network has to operate together. And we've asked NZTA for some support going forward for the next 6 months to make sure that we can actually manage them together and ensure that there aren't, you know, NZTA making a decision over here and council making a decision over there. And so far we're getting nods and getting support around that. And Minister McNulty was really helpful on that basis. He's also the local government minister, so we did chew his ear a little bit about slowing down some of the reforms that are weighting us down. I think we had 6 reforms with submissions closing within the last couple of weeks. That is just huge burden on top of business as usual. And look, one tiny little factor that's incredibly annoying is our auditor's late because there aren't enough auditors in New Zealand. And would you believe our auditors started the audit of last year's audit this week? So just asking the government just to back off a little bit on some of that compliance overlay, because you guys know what that's like. We're facing it as well, and yeah, some of that would be good to back off. We had Kitty Tapu Allen came through. Again, she has inherited the portfolio of Roading Regional, so she's Minister of Transport, Associate Minister of Transport Regional. We're still trying to work out what that means, but it seems like she will be in charge of regional roads. And we then had the Minister of Transport come through, Minister Woods, last week. So we've managed to tick the boxes of the roading ministers, and they've all seen State Highway 25A. So that's now 3 ministers that have stood there and looked over the edge and went, wow. And all of them have made really positive noises about getting that back. And I've got no doubt the guys at NZTA are working really hard to make that happen. How quickly they can make it happen and what the price tag is anybody's guess at this point. But I'm comforted they do know that they've got a set of options, and they have some ideas about where to. They are now also caught up in the national response, so probably the funding for it is going to end up coming through that. And I'll hand over to Lynn in a second, but many of you will have seen the announcement from the Prime Minister about an hour ago in terms of support package. So they've just put out an announcement of a $50 million business support package and a $250 million injection into emergency roading fund. And what that's for is dealing with the state highways that are broken, but also the local roads. And in this district, we're still waiting on the final number, but it's a significant number in terms of the damage to our local roads. That's basically unbudgeted for. It'll be completely unprecedented, and we'll certainly have some financial impacts. We've been talking to NZTA about stumping up with a big chunk of that, but we've now gone outside of their normal funding criteria, so we're going to have to put a bespoke business case into government to get them to step up the funding into our local roads. So, perhaps Mitch might be able to talk after.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Aileen. So that gives you a very, very quick overview of what is essentially 6 weeks worth of hard work. First thing I would like to do today is just acknowledge the terrible situation that Hawke's Bay and Tairāwhiti and some of those other districts are in. They've lost people, and our hearts go out to them. They are in a world of trouble down there. The mayors of these districts are very supportive of each other, and when we were going through our troubles, they reached out to me, and I've done the same to them and said, look, we're dealing with our own issues, but if there's anything we can do, please let us know. Now, I know that the death toll in Hawke's Bay at the moment is around 11, and that is awful. One of the things that is really important that we do as a district is that we retain some history of what we've gone through, and it's easy to forget that we have had 6 weather events since November, and the cumulative impact of those 6 weather events is absolutely significant. In amongst those 6 weather events, we lost 4 people to water-related tragedies during that, and so I don't want to forget those people, and there is damage and there is impact on all of this stuff that's happening. The effect on the business community is absolutely devastating, and there isn't a day goes by when I don't get calls and emails and messages from people right across the district. Our business people are hurting from this, and I don't have to tell you that because you know that because you're here right now. The conversation that we need to have with the government started back in January when we wrote to the Prime Minister. It has been continuing every week since then, and it will continue. It is a fast-moving and dynamic situation, and the support package that Aileen's just told you about, I didn't know about that until 10 minutes ago. So that's how fast this is moving. Up until the beginning of Cyclone Gabrielle a week ago, I got the feeling that the conversations that we were having with these cabinet ministers, our voice was being heard. They were listening. Then Cyclone Gabrielle hit, and that conversation changed. But it's changed in an interesting way, because I think what's happening now is that the government is getting the message that this is serious, and they are going to have to make some significant investments in our roading networks, our infrastructure, not just through the Coromandel Peninsula, but right across the vulnerable parts of the country that are being affected by this. So we're seeing the mood in Wellington change. We're seeing the conversation change to the point where this has to be part of what this government does, but it goes beyond that. And we're now seeing a conversation which is saying, well, hang on a minute, even if we've got a change of government in November or October, whenever the election is held, the conversation has to continue with whoever's in government after that. So when we're talking to politicians who might be in government, and whether it's Labour or whether it's National or National and Act or whoever it is, that conversation has to continue. So it behoves us as a community and as business people and as people in this district who are deeply affected by what's going on, we have to keep that message going. In other words, if you're not prepared to invest in the long-term resilience of our roading networks and our infrastructure, then we don't really have much to talk about, because that's our future at stake here. And so if you are talking to politicians of any colour, or any shape or any size or whatever, please keep that conversation going, because without that investment, our district is going to struggle for our long-term economic and social well-being. And please, we need your help and support on this. Our district, our small ratepayer base of 32,000 people, cannot afford the hundreds of millions of dollars that needs to be invested in this district. We can't do it on our own. So it's got to come from the government, and they're probably going to have to change the way they do things, and that might mean long-term borrowing. That's their problem. It will come back on us as taxpayers, but we can't do it as a ratepayer base. State Highway 25A, as Aileen's already talked to you, Ben Buttermore called me just before I left for this meeting. Now Ben Buttermore, we call him Superman or Mr. Everywhere. He is the lead contractor for Higgins, and he is the guy that was driving all of our roading response through the last 6 weeks. He has been an absolute godsend for us, because prior to Gabrielle, he got his teams out in every part of the district. Gary Towler, who was our Civil Defence Emergency Manager, he got out the preparation that we needed to get through this. They had generators, they had resources, they had people pre-distributed in every part of the district to make sure that when it hit, that we were ready to go. We've come through this in better shape than some of the other districts, but I don't want to undermine in any way the damage and the challenges that we face going forward. So Ben Buttermore was up on State Highway 25A. He'd gone down the bottom of the cut, he'd gone up the top. I've been over the top of it in a helicopter. Up above that fall, where the road's dropped away, it is steep, it's challenging. We're trying to see if we can get a track cut through there, so that if we do have the option of having a shuttle one side and a shuttle the other side, to maybe get some, similar to what they did in Kuatunu, to try and get some access for workers and students and health professionals and people that need to get through, to give us an option. So we're looking at that. We don't have any answers yet. It's still moving, it's still soft, but please rest assured that they're going to be working on that and getting some solutions through there as fast as possible. I think we need to be we need to be realistic about our expectations with 25A, Kopu Hekawai. It's going to be a long time. So from where we sit as a council, we've got to take State Highway 25 out of the picture. And where does that leave us? So where it leaves us is we've got the Thames Coast Road, which means access to the rest of the district will be, instead of coming to Kopu, turning right, going up 25A, people are going to turn left and come through Thames. So we've got an opportunity here, so long as we can get that access open, so long as we can get some resilience into the coast road and we don't keep getting interrupted by weather events, we've got an opportunity here, and I think we should be grabbing it with both hands. So there's an opportunity to promote what Thames has to offer, and it has a huge amount to offer, and I don't have to tell you, you all know that. So we're going to be working very closely with Destination Hauraki Coromandel, and you'll hear from Hadley, with the Thames Business Association, with local people with local ideas, to see what we can do to grab this opportunity and try and recover some of that business that's been lost. So the same applies for the Thames Coast Road, up through Coromandel, down through Whitianga. That is the access now to the rest of the district. If you're coming through the southern aspect, the southern access through Whangamata, then that's another option. But for people coming through this way, let's grab that opportunity. So very shortly I'm going to hand over to Mitch, and he's the head of our economic development unit. What we're doing, and we've had lots and lots of ideas flooding in from local business people and from people in the community who say, okay, what could we do for Thames? And these ideas are coming in. What is really important with this, and Mitch is going to help us with this, is that we don't end up with so many ideas pulling in all different directions that we don't achieve anything. Now, I've got 29 elected representatives plus me. So Thames Coromandel District Council has 30 elected representatives. When we get together in meetings, it's very easy to head off in 30 different directions. That doesn't achieve anything unless we are on the same page and we are cohesive and we have a spirit of cooperation and we can agree to disagree but also agree to cooperate. Then we're not going to achieve anything. So what I'd like to suggest is that the focus of the ideas coming through for Thames and for the coast and for these opportunities that we can use to drive business and to recover some of that economic gain that we've lost, it needs to be focused. So it's going to mean compromise. It's going to mean us working together. It's going to mean goodwill and making sure that we're all on the same page. And sometimes if you've got an idea that you really want to see happen, but it's not what the consensus was, maybe you've just got to bend and flex a little bit, because that's what we have to do in everything else that we're doing. So, Council is committed to supporting what we need to do to get Thames and the business community in Thames back on track. We don't have an unlimited pool of money. We are going through a process at the moment of looking at our annual plan and looking at our CapEx and OpEx numbers. There's no easy way to say this, but we are facing very, very challenging financial times, and these were in place before we even came to these storm events. So we ran out of money in our emergency roading pool in November. That was it, cleaned out. We now have to try and restock that money pool to get through this. We haven't made the decisions yet on how much we're going to do and what the impact on rates is going to be, but be prepared for some tough times ahead. And I know that's the last thing you want to hear, but you're all ratepayers, and that's the reality. So there's no way to sugarcoat that, I'm sorry. So I'll finish up now, but I just want to recap by saying that we are putting a huge amount of work on the government support that we need. We feel going to be forthcoming, but it's not going to be easy to get, and it's really important that we as a community keep having that conversation and keep our voices loud and at the front in a respectful way, because we've got to be mindful of the challenges that other districts are facing. But our voice needs to be loud, it needs to be consistent, and the message to the government has to be heard, and we'll make sure that's done. Thank you. I'll hand over to Mitch.
Thanks, Lynn. Hi everybody, my name is Mitch. I'm the Economic Development guy here at Council. So just a little bit about me, I guess, to start with. I used to be a small business guy, so I had 2 little businesses up in Auckland, and one of them was a corporate catering business that we owned and ran through the global financial crisis, where we just sort of watched all of our bookings just vanish for about 2 years. So I guess I just want to start with that to say that I know that for the people who are in the room who are having a difficult time, I understand, and that's why I work hard with my team. So over the last few weeks, I've been working to understand the impact on businesses so that we can communicate that effectively and be very strong advocates for your needs. And so we chucked out a little survey pretty quickly. We've got some data from a bunch of different resources, and we've shared that information with Wellington, with the Ministry for Business, Employment, Innovation, Employment. Oh my gosh, is that it? MB. And so we've been trying to say, hey, we need help over here. We've got some very unique challenges. Our economy depends on visitors largely, especially for that peak season to carry us through the slower times. So we've shared that with MB, and as Lynn and Aileen alluded to, the national focus has gone from sort of a district by district solution to a national approach to things, but that doesn't change the way that we work. So 4 o'clock this afternoon, we're sending emails to Wellington, and we're getting information back from them. So hopefully very shortly we'll have some more detail around the type of support that is available. For direct support, I know that there is a very high threshold for government cash, essentially. So it's not probably not going to be like COVID times when there were wage subsidies, although I could be wrong, they haven't announced that yet. But the threshold that MB were talking about earlier was for a 60% reduction in revenue. So that's not actually going to help everybody, because even a 10 or 15% knock can be really difficult. So, you know, I just wanted to be clear about that and explain that we are working every angle, and we're looking everywhere. What hasn't been mentioned yet is the Mayoral Disaster Relief Fund, which has a small kitty of money, which is available for individuals who have been affected, but also for those worst affected businesses who have seen sort of catastrophic declines in their revenue. So I encourage for those people who are in that box to have a look on our website. We can provide you with more detail about it. But I guess one thing that I'm interested in from you guys from this afternoon or at another point is to learn a bit more about the nuanced effects of these storm events on you guys. So the data doesn't really tell us much, and the real sort of stories are in the anecdotes that come from people and their real experiences. So one example is that in Coromandel, the oyster people up there, of course they were disrupted when the roads were closed, but even when the roads opened, the couriers changed their route, and they didn't do daily services past Coromandel anymore, and so they couldn't ship fresh oysters anymore to their customers. And so it wasn't their whole business, and the road was open, so if you were just looking at the data, you would think that things would be getting back to normal. But actually, there are all these nuanced consequences that remain. So if you have stories like that, please do share them with me. Don't want to take up too much time, but I'll just introduce my team quickly. This is Jason over here, and Lisa up the back. We do have to duck out before this completely winds up, but I'll leave my cards here. I'm free for a phone call or an email anytime. Okay.
Thanks, Mitch. One thing that I will talk about very briefly is the messaging. And the messaging that we have been trying to maintain some level of consistency over has been one of the biggest challenges that we've had. Essentially, the messaging is the roads are open, the roads are closed. The roads are open, the roads are closed. We're open for business. Come and visit. Hang on a minute. No, we've got slips. You can't get through. And this is happening on so many levels, and so it is so dynamic, and it changes so quickly, and there are so many players in this that it has been one of the hardest things for us to manage. And it is happening not just on a local level, but also on an international level. So when you've got visitors coming in from overseas and they see that Thames Coromandel is under a state of emergency, hang on, it's not safe, don't go to Thames Coromandel. But the more detailed picture to that is, well, actually Thames is okay, you can come to Thames and it's perfectly safe. So I've done dozens of interviews. Hadley Dryden's been out there with Destination Hauraki Coromandel, and we're working closely together to try and balance up that messaging. The media people that we've been working with have been fantastic, but sometimes the messaging that gets out, particularly in amongst the international media, has gone, cross country, and we can't control it. So we continue to try and I basically take every opportunity that I can to talk to the media to consistently get that messaging out. It is extraordinarily difficult to do that when you've got Rua Mahonga, for example, and it's closed, and then they get it open, and then there's another slip 30 minutes later. So that has been a challenge, and it will continue to be a challenge if we've got weather events. Once we settle, and at the moment we're getting to the point where it is getting a bit more settled, then it's a bit easier to get a consistent message out. But when we've got weather events, our number one priority, every time, is keep people safe. That's where we start from. If there's any risk and any danger to people, then that's where the messaging starts. But it does cause huge problems, and I understand your frustrations with that, so thank you. So we might, what we might do, Hadley's here, and he's going to talk to you about the Destination Hauraki Coromandel messaging. We are on really limited time because we've got some people that we're going to lose in a few minutes because they've got other commitments. But what I might do is ask you if there are any questions for council staff at the moment, particularly Aileen and Mitch. They need to go shortly, but if there are any questions that you would like to direct to council people, and we do those first, and then once they've gone, then Hadley will be here. I'll be here, I'll stay, but then we can let these folks go. So do we have any questions at the moment before I hand over to Hadley?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
So I work at the antique shop, so there's lots of international businesses that come, people who come through, and actually just at the end of last week, people were calling up coming in to me to ask about the roads. So I was looking online at Wakakatahi and you guys. In actual fact, the TCDC website had not been updated for 2 days. I would have thought that you actually want to keep your communication fluid, open all the time. Whether it's a 3 times a day update, that would be great. Because I think that we need to know what Wakakatahi was exactly saying. They hadn't updated either, but we've got people here now who are wanting to move on and want to feel that they can come back perhaps, but there's not enough information about how to transport through.
Yeah, thank you for that. And that is one of the most significant challenges that we've had. Typically, if you've got a period where the information on roading closures or access has not been updated, typically that would be because it is the same. It hasn't changed in that period. All of the people that were working in our emergency operations centre are the same people that are doing that messaging. So we had 100, 150 people stretched really thin who had been working solidly for 6 weeks. There were times when we dropped the ball and I don't think that there were that many, but we would take on board any comments or any feedback or anything that you have to offer, because overall, this is everything that we do is an opportunity to learn and to do it better. And that is one of the reasons why I think we've come through Gabrielle as well as we have, because we took those lessons on board and we were as prepared as we could be. But thank you for that, and we'll pass that on. Any other questions? So I'll hand over to Hadley Dryden. He is here, I saw it, there he is. For those that don't know, Hadley is the Chief Executive of Destination Hauraki Coromandel, and we've worked very closely together. He is really keen to hear your ideas and your input as to what we need to do to drive home this message of, we've got a really good offering here, how do we get it out there to the world? Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you, Mayor Lynn. Yeah, awesome turnout here, and I'll try and keep this short and sharp, but we've got a hell of a lot of information to get across and to get through. But my short message right now is I hope that we see lots of these faces in weeks and months to come, because we've got a pretty hard road ahead of us. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. It's brutal times. Just to let you know, our staff, we're a pretty small team, and we're servicing calls and emails region-wide, and we've had guys in tears ourselves from our own staff, so we understand to a certain extent the pain that you guys are withstanding right at this moment. I personally have my wife runs a business across the road there at Restore, so we see the impacts of what's going on there day to day, week to week, and we're going to see it month to month. But firstly, ko ngā maunga o hauraki, ko ngā wai o tikapa moana, ko ngā iwi katoa o hauraki ngā tangata tihei mauriora. So I'm just acknowledging the mountains, the waterways and the people within that we represent. So we are funded by Thames Coromandel District Council and the Hauraki District Council. That's the lion's share of our funding and why we exist. Previously, we've also received funding from the tourism industry, which stopped during COVID times as we just hunkered down and tried to enable them the minute to recover, if you like. Our brief changed somewhat. We were previously a marketing organisation charged solely with promoting Hauraki Coromandel as a visitor destination. That brief has changed somewhat due to the pandemic. Central government and the likes of NB have broadened that brief to look at destination management, and for Thames that's a crucial aspect that we need to look into months down the track. I would argue that now is not the right time for that. We're still in support and recovery mode, and on that I just, full disclosure, obviously we're funded by TCDC to some extent, but I'd like to acknowledge the work that they've done recently. We're hearing it right throughout the region, and I've just got off a meeting with the Visitor Sector Emergency Group, which is a nationwide meeting, and TCDC have been brought up on a number of occasions due to their response, and albeit it was almost too good in terms of getting support from national tourism entities and so on, because the recovery in the first initial storms was so good. So when that first storm hit, I'm talking about the big first storm, not the 5 events that Mayor Lynn you were referring to, our team just got on and decided that we were going to focus on 3 key aspects, and it was all based around support. So support for business, support for marketing the region to get back on track, and then in the long-term support for resilience, which is all about connectivity, roading infrastructure, even ferry connections through to Coromandel Town. Fuller's Ferry pulled out this year, unfortunately, and perhaps even air transport. So when we're talking about destination management, that's the sort of focus that we're looking at there. So I'll go into a little bit more detail about those specifics later, and perhaps as I field some of your questions. But right now we're sort of in the apex of this timing moment, and we're still in the support and recovery phase. And I think if you remember back to COVID, beyond that it wavers and then goes back into more of a sort of sensibilisation of what has actually happened, and we start to look at blaming other people. And then beyond that, it goes back to business as usual and our normal lives. And this is what I want to stress again, that we can't walk away from this meeting, because we're still in the support phase now. If we want to realise the potential of Thames, and I'm a local here and I know that's beyond this immediate response, that people will be like, what are we doing for Thames and what have you ever done for Thames? I know I've received emails and calls about that today even. That's a conversation that we need to have, but personally I don't believe it's something that we need to talk about right now, because we're still in the support phase. Just at the end of last week I got a call from my equivalent down in Tairāwhiti saying, have you guys got any Starlink devices? We can't get in touch with our people. So it's pretty real in terms of what's happening south, and on this visitor sector emergency meeting, I'm talking about the data that we've got and the real economic impact about what's happened here for our region. Sorry. And you're trying to do that and vouch for your place and where you stand, while understanding what's happening down in our Pacific Coast communities who we share this international highway with. So it's bloody difficult, to be honest. So in terms of the data and what's actually impacted us right now, is for January we lost $22 million in electronic card transactions alone. So that's people swiping credit cards and EFTPOS cards. That doesn't include any cash spend, doesn't include any forward online bookings. So that the actual amount, and this is only visitor spend alone, so this is for Hauraki Coromandel. So when you factor in those other elements, we're talking potentially that again. Prior to COVID, in the good times, the Coromandel visitor industry was worth over 500 million to this economy. We're now building back to a space where it's around 300 million, and that's electronic card transaction spend. So we know that cash and online bookings will mean that that's actually more to the region at this current point in time. Thames, you might hear that it's dialogue about the fact that it's all Pacific Coast locations that are going to suffer. Well, it's simply not true. Thames is down 30%, one of 4 regions that are down at over 30% in the January period in visitor spend. So the other ones, just for shits and giggles, Whitianga, Whangamata, Tairua and Thames. So yeah, it's pretty brutal out there. All the others are between 15 and 25% down in visitor spend for that period. So that's a little bit of data. The visitor numbers for January, we're looking at about 300,000 down on our typical visitor numbers that we'd get for the month. So our average transaction spend per every time someone swipes that card, it's around about $45. So you times that by 300,000 or whatever, understanding that not all those people are going to spend, but you get the picture. The quantum is pretty significant. So back to our support phase. Business, what are we doing for business? In that initial period before Cyclone Gabriel hit, we called a meeting with all the national tourism entities. So Tourism New Zealand, Tourism Export Council, Regional Tourism New Zealand. We had council there, the mayor, and lots of other bodies there, and we shared a whole lot of information that we had coming back from the tourism industry. And when I refer to the tourism industry, it's not just accommodation, transport and activities, it's hospitality and retail, food and beverage. In fact, accommodation, activities and transport benefit the least when you compare it to food and beverage, retail and travel and so on. Fuel. So yeah, we called a meeting with those guys, and we're starting to really advocate for the need for business support purely for Hauraki Coromandel. We had seen what had happened in Auckland, and we felt confident that we're getting some traction there, but then Gabriel hit, and obviously it's turned into a Upper North Island discussion. But we're still, as expressed in the meeting that we had today, still batting for the team. And in terms of marketing support, we got straight onto it and got in touch with the likes of Google partnership programs. people are getting deviated all over the region in terms of the best way to travel. And we managed to enable Google, or get Google to reroute people rather than going on the 309 or any dangerous roads to the more appropriate roads. And I guess there's a little bit of a silver lining for Thames in all of this. And that if we had a choice of how to promote the Coromandel, it would always be on State Highway 25. So we're going to look at ramping that up and really turning it on and sending it home. So this is a legacy out of this event that we can go to for future years. So Thames will be an entry-exit point for the region. However, in the meantime, I think one of the biggest challenges is the fact that Thames may no longer be used as a base for people to go around and do the loop because of the loss of that Kopu-Hikawai link. So it's a reality that we might have to face. So I also think that the visitor spend week by week and month by month is going to hurt. We're not going to be in the place that we were hoping to be as we rebuild out of COVID. We're going to see our numbers below month by month. So I think the advocacy that TCDC, that we're working hard with them and they're doing independent of us, as well as, and as Mayor Lynn said, that we need all the support we can. We just keep having to ram it home, unfortunately, and this is a delicate balance of, and we've got press releases that we've sent for checking just before I came here to say that we're open for business. Let's go, and I fielded a call from Hauraki District Council too. That's the delicate balance of trying to say that how desperate this situation is and how economically we're on our knees, but also in the same breath saying, come on, we're open for business, everything's all good. I could just keep going on, I can talk heaps about tourism, but I know we're short on time, so I'd just like to acknowledge TCDC again. They don't get the love they deserve. They're probably the first people that people like to blame, and out of this job, you guys, take my hat off to you guys. Unbelievable, and full disclosure, we're funded by you guys to a point. MB do our lion's share of funding at the moment out of the respect of the pandemic, but yeah, right now's the time, I believe, for support. We can come back in a couple of months and talk about the potential of world-class Thames. So you've got your heritage attractions, you've got the Kauranga Valley with the pinnacles. It's probably the most walked attraction outside of the Great Walks in New Zealand. You've got canyons, which would be in my top visitor attractions in the whole country. You've got the Thames Coast Highway and the supermarket, which is the fishing. All the heritage attractions which I've touched on and the untapped potential there, the Hauraki Rail Trail. I could sell this place for what it's worth. Somehow the nugget just hasn't quite landed. I know that there's people desperate to have that conversation. I just don't think right now is the time to that. We're in support mode. So with respect, I'm happy to field questions about it though. That's just my opinion.
Do you have any sort of timelines on where the major attractions will be reopening?
Major attractions?
Well, like Cove and the Kauranga Valley.
So DOC is still running through their assessments at this stage. So we haven't had any update in terms of when. Yeah, so with respect to the Cove, that can still be accessed by boat and kayak tours. But yeah, we're still waiting to hear that from DOC, but I'm not sure if you guys have.
Probably within a week, but I don't know about the Cove, so but Kauranga Valley, pinnacles and some of the way tracks might be within a week.
So I don't know if the folks heard that, Aileen saying some of the major attractions, Cove, pinnacles, Waimea Valley might be open within a week. Fingers crossed.
Not the Cove.
Oh, sorry.
Hello, my name's Beverly. Hadley, hello, and Lynn.
I'm just going to drop that volume down a bit so that you can
I do talk quite loudly.
which is the
I can whisper.
go ahead, Beverly. Yep.
Okay, thank you. We live at Kopu, and we're aware of the new service station that's being built there and the food place that's going to be there. And I think that needs to be taken into account as how that can be used, perhaps even the information centre be there, to get people directed into Thames Township. So in combination with the service station, the roundabout, which is a big issue with the locals, with everybody, if that could be incorporated, and I know this is not the conversation you're having now, but that service station is going to draw a lot of people there who then might go away south, who may not come into Thames and who will take business away from food places. So that's a really big consideration, I think, in the future development.
Question at the back. Thank you.
I don't need the mic.
Well, you don't.
We've had some concerns of late, and we're talking about eyesight. And I do believe that right now would be the perfect time to pick up eyesight again, because this is information that our people need, not only the New Zealanders that come to Thames and go further afield, but to the new people coming into our country. Now, I'm not particularly caring about where it is, I just want it back, because I worked for Citizens Advice Bureau and got plenty of tourists coming to me to ask the questions. I don't believe for one moment that our council should have to pay for it all. Absolutely not. The council doesn't have the money for that, and I think it's unfair that the council should pay for all of that when there are other organisations to do with tourism, which you have just stated, that could possibly come and help Thames set that up properly. There are several places where it could be, and there could be changes in the future depending upon how we grow Thames, but I definitely feel that we need the one place for people to go to get the up-to-date information and have it manned properly. So then we're all on the same page and we're all making our visitors happy to be here.
Thank you. We know this is a real, very important topic, and I'll hand over to Hadley in a second. Just from a council point of view, we have no problem as a council in supporting the eyesight. The history of the eyesight being moved goes back to the COVID days when it was difficult to get things moving anyway. It was, nobody wanted to do it, nobody wanted to fund it, and there's some history there. We've had this conversation, and I've pre-warned Hadley this is going to come up, because we really need to identify the issues here and find a better solution. But the process for that is going to be probably, we've got a year and a half left on that lease, but I think between now and then, or even sooner, we've got to come up with some solutions. So thank you for raising that. It's very important.
Yeah, sorry, I forget your name, but key point is that right now is the perfect time where eyesights and information centres come into their own in times of crisis. I won't go into detail, but the eyesight model, as it stands globally and nationally, is hugely challenged. And I guess to pick up on another of your points, the model in terms of becoming more sustainable requires, particularly in communities such as Thames, requires a basis of volunteers to make it viable at all. And that's with ratepayer-based funding support. So I won't go into detail beyond that unless there's more questions. But,
Talking about anything else is useless, because I get people in my shop every day asking.
Yeah,
It's just an absolute bloody embarrassment.
Yeah, I hear you, like to go into detail, but basically they're money pits, like to put it
I
lightly.
don't give a shit about that, right? Because you're talking about running something for visitors to get.
Yeah.
A major part of it, you won't do it. It's just embarrassing. You're not there every day.
I can hear you being honest, I do. But there's an opportunity for us. The only way eyesight can really work is if they can make money. That's how they used to work. They used to take commissions on sales when there wasn't Expedia and there wasn't Booking.com. So I think unless, or cell phones. So I think, Greg, do you have a
Yeah, I just want to say that there are other models.
Yeah.
So it's not about a money pit.
Yeah.
It's not about the commerciality of the eyesight itself. This is about partnership, which is one of the things that I put in my submission about the way we need to move forward. Partnership between council, partnership between Destination Coromandel, partnership between the Thames Business Association, membership of the Business Association, including contributions to running the information centre, and that will be a circle level work where people are working together.
Yeah.
I'm sure that the members of the Thames Business Association would equally support supporting the information centre. Just like Peter, we get people in our shop every single day asking where the information centre is, and we can direct them down there, but all there is pamphlets, and they don't want pamphlets, they want good advice from a human. A local human who knows actually what to do. So I think that the information centre issue is big in Thames, and there are options that as a community we should look at.
Yeah, totally.
Council is prepared to play our part. We will make a contribution, but we're not the whole solution.
As part of our very early long-term planning discussions, council actually tasked the staff to go away and have a look at an option, which is exactly all the things you're talking about, what other services, what other things have been delivered out of it. And where I came from in Apuriki, we actually had an eyesight that was co-located with dock, so they covered each other's breaks. And in the winter they ran events, and it was multifaceted, and in COVID they became my call centre. So there's a whole lot of options, and we've been tasked to look at it. So happy for feedback, and I don't know if Mitch knows this yet, but happy for feedback about it, how that might work. And so going into this time next year, when we're building our long-term plans, and probably later in the next half of this year, it'd be really good to have some of those ideas and firm up some sort of business case analysis of it. So we'll put those ideas.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys. I'm going to step in here. I'm just very conscious of the time. The intention we have for part of this meeting is for you to hear the latest information about where things are at and what's happening. It's also the intention is to solicit from the businesses the suggestions and ideas that businesses have as to what we can do in the short term, medium term, long term to improve or to mitigate the situation that we're in. So what I'd like to do is we did request, or Thames Business Association requested submissions, and we have had quite a few submissions. What I'd like to do is just run through those, first of all, so you can see the ideas that they're already, and then secondly, pick up on any other suggestions or ideas that come out from the floor. The intention is that the output of this meeting will then be the Thames Business Association will sit down with council, with Destination Coromandel, and work out from all these ideas what are the ones that we can do something about. So if there is an idea, for instance, let's open an eyesight, then that idea will be taken by the Thames Business Association, and they will sit down with council and Destination Coromandel and thrash it out, and see what can be done. So that's the intent of this part of the session. So in the submissions, we ask people to what's the problem you're trying to solve? What is the issue? And here are just kind of summary statements of what Thames Business Association received in. So the loss of State Highway 25A, my waste business, I've got to do a lot more driving, which obviously adds to the cost. The road closure sign at the beginning of the Tapu Corriglen Road means that people won't go and experience the water gardens. The impact of the road closure having on people visiting, and that's been talked about quite a bit. Employees, visitors, shoppers unable to access Thames or have incurred significantly longer travel times. People are not just going to pop over from Tairua to go to Farmers anymore. Reduced Waikato Auckland visitation due to unhelpful media narrative of the peninsula being closed, which is an issue that Lynn was referring to. Short term, we need to get the people back. Longer term, the plan which should target government support and be driven by an economic development strategy consisting of business and council, which is what Mitch was talking to. Improved pedestrian and non-motorised vehicular safety in the CBD. No eyesight in Thames telling people where to go and what they can do. So these are some of the issues that were raised in the submissions. Hospo businesses are really suffering, with the emphasis on really, and Hadley pointed us to that and what's happening with the hospitality industry. So what were the suggestions that then people came up with to address some of those things? Improve visitor information services, e.g. re-establish an eyesight or an equivalent in Thames, a combination of things there. What can be done? And so that's the issue that's been raised at the back, and that is an issue that TBA will sit down with Destination Coromandel and Thames and thrash it out to come to some conclusion about that. Open Mary Street and revitalise to reconnect the town centre with State Highway 25 and Goldfields. Add signage at the beginning of the Tapu Coroglen Road to advise visitors that you can go to the water park. Lobby central government to acquire and redevelop Tapu Coroglen as State Highway 25B and invest further in 25A to make it, in 25 to make it more resilient. Okay, so that's something that could not be done in the next 6 months, but it could be something that might make real sense, as Lynn was alluding to, in the longer term. Better promotion of Thames being accessible, open for business, and promoting the local area attractions to motivate visitors. What can be done to promote Thames? So that's something that we need to investigate further, as has been said. Investigate deferring Pollen Street upgrade to reduce further disruption to CBD businesses during what's shaping to be a difficult year. I think, as we all know, that Pollen Street, the pipes are, whatever the pipes do, rust or whatever they do, and are due for replacement. And there's a project that we have in council to repair all those, which does mean disruption in Pollen Street. Suggestion here to defer the Pollen Street upgrade. That is something that we will take to council, Destination Coromandel, and thrash out to get to a point. Ask TCDC to accept a tolling agreement for disposal of commercial waste to TCDC RTS sites, so that cut rubbish doesn't have to be carted back across the ranges, the long way round, adding costs and so on. That there is potentially a solution that could actually make that could significantly mitigate that for any of the waste businesses or any business that's dependent on going around across the peninsula. Develop a whole of peninsula approach to using price initiatives around the things that people come to the Coromandel for: Cathedral Cove, fishing, walks, hike, etc., supported by a strong marketing campaign. So that's a suggestion from a business that could be done. That will come into, once again, the discussion with TCDC and Destination Coromandel. Develop a economic development strategy for the district, and Mitch has already alluded to that. Make most of Pollen Street one way, parking on the west side of the street to be angled, pedestrian crossings at all intersections, additional roundabouts on Queen Street so the traffic and people flow is significantly improved. So kind of a longer term suggestion that would improve the way traffic and people move around Thames. Probably not something that will be done in the next 6 months, but it will be something that we will discuss and come to a point on. Coromandel Food Producers Network to organise events, e.g. a food trail to support hospo businesses. So the Coromandel Food Producers Network believe that there's something there that they could do that would help businesses by organising events such as a food trail to support hospitality businesses. So those are the ones that came in from written submissions. You saw the issues, and these are some of the ideas, and these ideas will be collected up, as I said, and taken into discussion. The next thing then is, before I go on, are there any comments anybody wishes to make around any of that stuff, or any questions around any of that stuff? Okay.
So, just one question. The question of signage that was brought up.
Yep.
When Mary's Street was closed, signage was designed to direct people into Collins Street.
Right.
And totally a lot of new signage. I saw some of the design of it. It's never actually been implemented.
Okay.
I don't know why, but it was all designed and approved to get. So anyway, all the visitors coming to town are properly directed into the CBD.
Okay. So let's collect that as the first new suggestion from the floor. When you came in the door, you got 4 red dots. Did you? Who's lost their 4 red dots? Murray. No, you've got 4 red dots. Because at the end of this, within the next 10 minutes, those red dots are your votes. Right? So we're going to have all these things, and we just want you to put a spot on any of those ideas that you think is a good idea. And if you want to, you can put all your dots on one idea, or you can spread your dots over 4 ideas, or if you really think they're hopeless ideas, you can just keep your dots and take them, give them to your grandkids. So, suggestions from the floor, and at this point I'll move over to the whiteboard and just try and capture really briefly your suggestions. And I'll start with Warren's. Signage into Thames Township.
I'd like to add,
Yes.
add to that.
Oh, sorry, you wanted to add to that?
I sent in a written submission for, and it didn't come up, and that was innovative signage to excite people to visit Thames.
Okay.
So Hopu and coming into Thames and at North Thames as well, and also to bring people into town. And I'm surprised it didn't come up. And also to beautify Thames. A lot of businesses, I was on the Business Association, were interested in doing flower baskets outside their shops, on the verandas, make this a beautiful town, which it has the potential to be. But there's no access to water, so that would be great if council could organise that.
Thanks.
And
We'll need to move on. Yeah.
The way to solve the problem of the traffic flow is to get rid of the viaduct.
Get rid of the vibe. I think, didn't that come up in one of the submissions? Well, I think it was in one of the submissions.
I got one quick one for us all. I had to go to Auckland for business on the weekend. And on the way back, there's the NZTA signs advertising that 25A is closed. Can we have a discussion from council with NZTA to say Thames is open?
Yeah.
Easy one.
Perhaps we could get rid of the weeds at the roundabout.
yes.
Well, that whole roundabout really needs an upgrade. It's just disgusting.
It's disgusting, absolutely. I also put in the Kentucky Fry roundabout as well, because that's disgusting too.
Don.
Yeah, Peter, a point that was made in the submission about one way in Holland Street was that that work could be done along the side, putting the place up, because you can relabel, you've got to remark the street anyway, so you can remark it in a new format.
Right, okay, so we've captured
I think it was captured.
It's a good,
like that.
Yeah. Sorry.
It hasn't been mentioned, but a ferry, a long-term thing, is getting a ferry that runs from Thames, Coromandel, Bookingcom, Bombatar, and Vic.
So at least if the roads are blocked, they can still use the ferry as transport? I was thinking like
ferry around the peninsula.
If the roads are blocked, they can still use the
Golden Strait. Yes.
It's about actually promoting that area. So I've also got a business in Pukekohe, and we did, coming out of COVID, a campaign about the Pukekohe area that went out on social media. And every business that was involved pushed that message out over their social media pages. And it was going through the businesses talking about what made Pukekohe special. So what makes Thames special? As business owners, we all know what makes it special, so why don't we get that message out? And that's something that could be done really quickly.
Can I just ask one question? How do we feel about the gateway to Thames or gateway to the Coromandel? The destination?
Destination Thames.
Destination Thames?
Yeah.
So the gateway, all those in favour of the gateway to the Coromandel?
Doesn't say destination.
Destination Thames? Come on, hands up. Thank you. Thank you. There you go.
Which is also because he's in there, no point in sucking up to him, honestly.
Peter, just following up on what this lady had to say. I had a look at the TBA website today, and there's like a lack of exposure for the businesses. It hasn't been updated in so long, and if we're going to get the social media campaign, we need more information about the businesses that are actually TBA members.
Thank you, Tom. And the ones that aren't members.
And the ones that aren't members.
All the businesses.
All the businesses.
Okay, come on. Yeah.
Hi, like, this is a like long-term question. Like, what is the update or like what we are doing for the new housing as like everybody struggles for rental or buying a house? Like, so what's the update for the new sections or anything? Or is it a question to council or? Ma'am. Okay. Now, is this like long-term? Just briefly, then.
Please.
Solve the Thames housing problem in 30 seconds? Yeah, sorry, can't do that. We are very, very focused on Thames housing, but it's a long-term thing. We can't fix that overnight, but we know about it.
Can't we like get some like new like all the section like towards Kopu, like we got like plenty of land over there. So is that like not an option? Like we can like build a new section?
Everything's on the table. Everything's on the table.
Good point. Thank you so much.
Monica.
Well, I strongly disagree that now is not the time to talk about Thames. Now is the time to talk about Thames. And Thames as a destination, no longer a gateway.
Not a long-term plan, a short-term.
And I think added to that is the idea of not doing anything about an eyesight for a year is just crazy. Totally crazy. It needs to be done within a month.
Tomorrow.
I do, within a month. You need to have a visitor information centre open immediately.
I'll just capture it.
The visitors can compensate for the 30% of business that's missing from the other side.
Very good. Cheers.
I just think that point number 19, Peter, if we can just define that a bit more, the Thames, that website was originally developed and was funded by the Thames Community Board as a Thames destination website. The branding of it has changed to a Thames Business Association branding, so we just need to change the branding back to Destination Thames. You know, the focus of that website was never to be to promote the business association, it was there to promote Thames.
Good point. Thank you. And Greg was one of the founding members of the Business Association. Richard, I thought you're allowed to talk.
I might talk, but it's not the same website. It's not the same.
Not the same website.
It is the same website.
Anyway, okay. Take it offline.
Let's say that would be really helpful
as if the town had a strategic brand. So, like, we've got Coromandel Good for Your Soul, which is focusing the world's interest on Coromandel. But what about something that's a strategic brand for Thames and can focus on the national audience to bring people to Thames? So we're very good at attracting global clients, New York rich listers, to come and spend their millions up the Coromandel. But what about getting people from Hamilton to have a day trip over here? On the weekend, we're no good at that. We've got no brand, we've got no draw cards.
Can you capture that in 5 words?
Thames branding.
Thames branding.
Hey, can I just ask one question? The rainbow stairs and the rainbow colours down by Victoria Park. Every time I see that, and so many people have talked to me about the rainbow stairs, I wonder if there's an opportunity to extend that theme wider in Thames. Is that an option?
Caramella's pretty much got ownership of the rainbow.
I'm sorry?
Caramella.
Never heard of it, sorry.
Kia ora everybody, my name's Fiona Cabron. I've got a business with Bounty, but I'm chair of Creative Coromandel. Our mahi is to advocate for arts, heritage and culture right throughout the Coromandel. Now Thames has got a lot to offer. I do work with Hadley, doing a great job, and I work in with other organisations, Treasury, the Thames Museum, the Thames Museum, all the art galleries. There's a lot to offer, and I feel that we need to have, we need to work together. We need to do what we call collaboration. We need to have one vision. You said about the vision. We are branding as heritage, culture, arts. We've got a lot to offer, and I just think people need to come together and have that leadership, but also have sustainable change, which is growing the arts, heritage, culture, and tourism all over the globe, which is funded through Thames. And if anybody wants to come to our huis, which we're running around the Coromandel at the moment, we'll be rolling them out. They've been postponed a bit because of the weather, but we are having huis to talk about the arts and culture through the Coromandel. Thank you.
Thanks, Fiona. That's really good stuff that's going on there, that integration between the arts community, culture, heritage and business promotion. So well done.
Okay. I think Thames is part of the Coromandel myself. In the past 25 years, I've travelled the countryside doing some of the major events. And the festivals down there in Queenstown, Fish Young Festival, dealt with Dean Colbert and VN Supercars many times, mentioned what's happened to rugby over here. And I think, and with that, when I travel, our team or my team, they wear the Coromandel brand. And everyone recognises, even Thames, the gateway of the Coromandel. So Coromandel is a brand. If we separate that, we're going to dilute it. I think Thames should become as it is now and be part of the Coromandel brand.
Thank you. That will be captured as part of the branding. David, and then down the back, and that's it.
So something that just is immediate, grabs not only business but community interest, just a shop local campaign. Everyone enjoys doing that.
Shop local. Thank you. Is this what you were wanting, Lynn?
Absolutely.
Are we forgetting how Thames got its name in the first place? Where's our Captain Cook Memorial?
Oh. It's in going to a museum. I think it's about to go into a museum somewhere. Okay, folks, so what we've got now is we have, oh, look at that, hey?
Good number.
What we've got now is the 11 suggestions that came via the internet or wherever, and these ones we've just had, okay? They're going to stick on that wall. I'm just going to stick these bits of paper, and there's a number related to each suggestion. That's where you put your red dot and you go and get a cup of tea. Is that right? Okay, so you come around this way, put your red dot on the idea or the ideas that you think. And it purely is just for us to just get a sense of there was a lot of enthusiasm or passion about this. if an idea gets 10 dots, it doesn't necessarily mean it will happen. And if an idea gets no dots, it doesn't mean it will happen. We're just to try and get a sense of the business community saying, this is a really good idea. Tom?
Yeah, just one quick point. Can we publish this online so people can actually upload anecdotes?
Yeah, look, yes.
Mitch was talking about getting anecdotes.
This is the first part of the process. You know, some more information can come in. And Murray?
Do we get to talk to our submission or not? Is it joint back or?
No, sorry. Thank you. Sorry. We're now moving to the voting. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to say one more thing. Recently, we've been looking at the new playground for the children out in Queen Street, and someone, from the goodness of their heart, donated $1 million. Am I correct?
You are. Yes.
Okay. If we can't build a sensible, good playground for less than $1 million, which I think is an overkill, quite frankly, the money we can use, if we can, that's already been set aside by people here, can be used for perhaps eyesight. You know, we shouldn't be spending $1 million plus to have a playground when we should all be looking at our dollar values. We are overspending in one area, so therefore we have to donate the money for something else. $1 million for a child's playground is an insane amount of money. It's not our money. So therefore the money which other people have put aside and donated to that cause through the business association, and they have done, that money could be utilised for something better than having $1.5 million a playground.
Thank you. Okay, so at this point, first of all, a huge thanks to people for tuning out. This is really important for us as council and for us to be able to represent back to Wellington the significance of the thinking that's gone on. This is not a group of 10 or 15 people. This is a room full, with standing room only. This helps us send a significant message with whatever it is we're approaching Wellington for in terms of support around these things that we're going to be looking at. Secondly, I just want to acknowledge Adrian and the Thames Community Board. Adrian is the chair of the Thames Community Board, because it was Adrian who on behalf of the Thames Community Board approached the Thames Business Association to say, hey, wouldn't it be a good idea to have a forum and look at it? It is really good. So well done, Adrian. Thank you for that. And thank you, Lynn, for marshalling all the resources and getting Aileen and her team along to contribute to this. This is not just this is the beginning of a process, right? TBA has said that they will undertake to keep you updated with these things and what happens and where things go, etc., etc. TCDC has committed to getting this input, and that was sort of Lynn's mandate was, look, just can we have the ideas? There's no such a thing as a good idea or a bad idea. They're all good ideas, and they will be looked at. Some of them, just when you look at it and say that would be easy to do, let's do it, and maybe it is. And some of them look like really hard, but boy, it might make a difference in the long haul that Lynn was talking about, as we think 10, 20, and 30 years down to the future. So, thank you, Jeff Graham, for having TBA do this and what have you. Please get your dots there, and at the back there's tea and coffee and chocolate biscuits and but there's no other. Because we will have to get home.
Can I take 2 minutes, please?
Okay, thank you very much.